the theme in the book of Job is blessings through suffering. So that's like, the kind of the overarching theme that we will see in the book of Job. If you were to do a little bit of study about the book of Job, most likely the book of Job is the oldest book of the Bible. So if it's not, the canon is not necessarily put in chronological order, okay? So we get things that are misplaced. That's why you'll read stories at other places from time to time. But the book of Job is probably the oldest written book. That's why last year when we read the chronological order of the Bible, you got like Genesis 1, 2, and 3, and then Job. It's because it is an older book, and it addresses an issue that is an age-old issue. How do we deal with suffering, and why do good people suffer? Why is it that if you're doing what you're supposed to do, why is it that you still have to deal with trouble and heartache and pain? And so today we're going to look at these 22 verses in the first chapter of Job, and we're going to talk about something that I think often gets abused when we think about it eliminating suffering. So I think there are extremes everywhere, and we're going to talk about two things that I think people use often to say, oh, if you do this or you have this, you won't suffer, or if you don't have this, you won't suffer, both of which are falsehoods. And so I hope today there is something we can learn. So here's the first thing I want to talk about. Riches and righteousness can go together. So I grew up in a holiness movement. I'll talk about it frequently. And the theme for many of the people that I grew up with was that the way to be holy was to be broke and ugly. They did it with good intention, and some of it. Listen, and I want to say this because if like this, your only time ever hearing me preach, I want you to understand I'm not making fun. Some of the things that they believed we should be returning to, we have strayed so far away from what it looks like to live a godly life that it wouldn't hurt us to return some of those things, but it was an extreme. There were pieces of it that were extremes. And so the uglier you were and the poorer you were, the more holy you were. And that's a bad extreme. Now, what I also want to say is on the other end of that spectrum is what we might call the prosperity gospel, which says if you do right, you will be rich. If you just do A, B, and C, you will be rich. And the richer you are, the closer you are to God. And that's just as much of a myth as the other end of the spectrum. Okay? And so the first thing I want to talk about is these two things can go together. Both extremes are flawed. You may be righteous and not be rich. You may be rich and not be righteous, but the two can go together. So it says this about Job. It says, there once was a man named Job who lived in the land of Uz. He was blameless, a man of complete integrity. He feared God and stayed away from evil. He had 7 sons and 3 daughters. He owned 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels, 500 teams of oxen, and 500 female donkeys. He also had many servants, and notice this, it says he was, in fact, the richest person in that area. So let's just talk about his wealth before I read the rest of it. He says, one, he's the richest person in that entire region. Everybody knew Job as a rich man, and it starts out listing his wealth with his sons and his daughters. Okay? And this is what I want to tell you because I think Scripture bears this out. The greatest treasure you have is the gift of family. And if you start on the other things without understanding the gift of family, you will have missed the most important thing. Okay? But it says he has all of these things, 7,000 sheep. If you have no idea what it would take to take care of that many sheep, there would be lots of shepherds and people that would take care of it, and camels and the donkeys and the oxen. And so he's a very wealthy person. And then it says this, it says Job's sons would take turns preparing feasts in their homes, and they would also invite their 3 sisters to celebrate with them. When these celebrations ended, sometimes after several days, Job would purify his children. Now, I just want to say that most of you know I'm not like a celebrator. I'm not a good, if you invite me to your party, I won't be there long. I will come, and as soon as I can make an exit without offending anybody, I will be gone. And if you invite me to a 3-day party, after a couple hours, I'm going to be the most miserable person in the room. Like, I just like 3, holy cow. How do you celebrate that many days in a row? Sometimes I'm jealous. Like, I wish I could enjoy those moments better. I'm just not. Like, I struggle in those environments. But they loved it, like for days. And after most, if you had a 3-day party, there's a high likelihood somebody has sinned. And it says Job would purify his children. He would get up early in the morning and offer a burnt offering for each of them. For Job said to himself, perhaps my children have sinned and have cursed God in their hearts. So I want to talk to you about, just point out a couple of things. Will you go back to the previous screen, please? I just want to show you a couple of things it says about Job. It says, Job was blameless. He was a man of complete integrity. He feared God. He stayed away from evil. This is the righteousness piece. It says he had 7 sons, 3 daughters, 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels, 500 teams of oxen, and 500 female donkeys. He also had many servants. He was the richest person in the area. So he also had material blessings. And then when we get to the next screen, the next set of verses, it says he also spent time with his family. Don't let anybody fool you into believing that you can't earn a living, live righteously, and be a family person. You see, one of the things that we're like, okay, if I'm going to have money, I got to sacrifice the family. If I'm going to have a family, I'm going to have to sacrifice money. If I'm going to have money, I got to sacrifice righteousness. No, Job proves out that you can be a person of integrity and live a righteous life, and you can be wealthy, and you can honor your family at the same time. And he went the extra step, because in the Old Testament, they could offer sacrifices for other people. He went the extra step of offering sacrifices for his family, because just in case they sinned and have cursed God in their hearts. And it says this was Job's regular practice. Here's the second thing, though. Riches and or righteousness will make you a target. A few weeks ago, we talked about growth and the challenges that come with it, and how that if you make one step in a positive direction, there's going to be somebody there trying to pull you back. 100% of the time, that's the way it works. If you step in this direction, there's going to be something there that tries to drag you back. And you have to be prepared for that. Like I tell people all the time, some people think, okay, if I get saved, all of my battles are solved. No, you haven't had one until you come to Jesus. I mean, the minute that you come to Jesus, the battle is on. All right, there's always going to be someone after you, and it doesn't matter whether it's wealth, okay, riches and righteousness are 2 of those things that put targets on you. And there's this misperception, okay, that righteous people think they are better than other people, and rich people think they're better than other people. And I just want to say this. My experience is that most arrogant people in the world are either broke or broken, not rich and righteous. Let me say that again, just in case you missed it. My experience in this world is that most of the arrogant people are broke or broken, not rich or righteous. That's just my personal experience. Most people that are arrogant are trying to tell you a story that isn't true. You understand that? That's what arrogance is. Arrogance is trying to tell you a story that's not accurate. I'm not broken. I'm not broke. I am better than you. That they're trying to make you perceive something that's not true. People who actually are something don't make you feel that way. People who are actually living a godly life, they don't make you feel inferior. People who actually have wealth, they don't make you feel inferior. That's not my experience in life. My experience is, though, that the most arrogant people in the world are broke and broken, and they're trying to make you believe a story. They're trying to sell you something that is not true. You see, success in your spiritual life, success in your financial life will draw attention to you and cause other people to try to bring you down. Satan does not care as long as your life is in a spiral. As long as you're going down a drain somewhere, he's like, yeah, okay, I don't need to spend any extra time over here. They're doing it on their own just fine, right? Right? I mean, why does he need to put an extra demon in your, neighborhood when you're taking care of that by yourself? He doesn't have to, as long as your life's in a spiral. But the minute that you start to change, the minute that you start to live a godly life, to live the righteous life God has called you to live, you will become target number one on the enemy's list. And Job chapter 1, theologically, is one of the most challenging chapters in all of the Bible, okay? It brings to us some things that I don't have time to talk about today. But it says this: one day, the members of the heavenly court, that should set off alarm bells, like who is in this court and how often do they get together and what is the conversation, and Satan is there. Okay? It says, one day the members of the heavenly court came to present themselves before the Lord, and the accuser, Satan, came with them. It says, where have you come from, the Lord asked Satan. Satan answered the Lord, I have been patrolling the earth, watching everything that's going on. Then the Lord asked Satan, have you noticed my servant Job? He is the finest man in all the earth. He is blameless, a man of complete integrity. He fears God and stays away from evil. Satan replied to the Lord, yes, but Job has good reason to fear God. You have always put a wall of protection around him and his home and his property. You have made him prosper in everything he does. Look how rich he is. But reach out and take away everything he has, and he will surely curse you to your face. All right, you may test him, the Lord said to Satan. Do whatever you want with everything he possesses, but don't harm him physically. So Satan left the Lord's presence. It says at the beginning of this, it identifies Satan, followed by a definition of what he spends most of his time doing, the accuser. Never forget that Satan is the accuser. If you want to know where most false accusations come from, that is where they're coming from. And God just says, like, there's this meeting in heaven. Divine counsel is what many scholars would say this would be. And there are multiple beings at this meeting, okay? Satan is present, and God asked him, where you been? He's like, I've been checking out the earth. That's my domain, I'm the prince of the power of the air. So I've been seeing what's happening down on the earth. I've been checking things out. And then God said, have you noticed my servant Job? And I want to be honest, when I read this, all I can think about is Will Smith, and I want to tell God, leave my name out of your mouth. Like, some of y'all catch that, right? Like I want God to be proud of me, but I don't want him to be proud enough that he brings me up to Satan. Right? Like, he could have choose somebody else. No, I ain't living that good, God. No, it's them over there. It says, but he says, have you noticed my servant Job? And it's interesting in this passage, God points to Job's righteous qualities. He says he's blameless and he is a man of integrity and he stays away from evil. But notice what Satan points to. Satan points to his riches. Satan says, you've kept a hedge around him and you've prospered him in everything he has. Look how rich he is. Satan's perspective, okay, was how much money Job had. God's perspective was how righteous Job was living. If you want to know which one's more important to God, it's your integrity. Never sacrifice your integrity for riches. Ever. Never sacrifice your righteousness for wealth. Ever. You can have the two. They both can go together, but you shouldn't sacrifice your walk with God for this piece over here. And Job becomes a target, and God grants him permission to Satan. He says, you can test him, do whatever you want, you just can't touch his body. Now we're going to find later that God gives him permission to touch his body. God gives him permission to inflict him with trouble. Here's the thing I want you to understand. Satan believes that if you lose enough, you'll turn your back on God. He believes that. He believes if I can take their job, or I can take their money, or I can take this person from their life, or I can take this house or this possession or this influence that they have, if they lose enough, eventually they will turn their back on God. Job proves him wrong, but Satan, the minute that he got permission. Now, I was preparing for this message. I got a strange text from my cousin who's like my uncle. Him and my dad are about the same age. But he said, is God in control of everything? Well, the short answer has to be yes. That's the short answer. He either is or he isn't. That's the short answer. Now, the more complicated question is, what does he allow? And there clearly are some things he allows, and there clearly are some things he does not allow. And, I'm a free will person, so I believe you have choices you make, and there are consequences to the choices that you make. But we have to believe ultimately God's in control. And as soon as the minute that Satan got permission, he left. And this is the last thing I want to share with you. Riches and righteousness do not exempt you from suffering. You cannot get enough money to eliminate problems from your life. You cannot live good enough to keep bad things from happening. The Bible says it rains on the just and the unjust. Now, everybody has different responses to this, right? Some people say, well, there's no use in trying because life's going to be bad and I'm always going to have trouble. Other people are like, well, if I'm going to have trouble, the minutes that I ain't, we're going to enjoy it, right? And here's the thing you need to understand. There is nothing. You can't have enough faith. That's not even in the Bible. You can't have enough faith to eliminate all the pain and suffering from your life. People are still going to die. People are still going to suffer. People are still going to struggle. There are still going to be atrocities that happen around you. And sometimes the suffering you experience is not because of something you've done, but because something someone else has done. It says this: one day, Job's sons and daughters were feasting at the oldest brother's house. A messenger arrived at Job's home with this news: your oxen were plowing, with the donkeys feeding beside them. When the Sabians raided us, they stole all the animals and killed all the farm hands. I'm the only one who escaped to tell you. While he was still speaking, another messenger arrived with this news: the fire of God has fallen. That right there should cause you some theological questions. Okay? You should read the Bible and go, oh, I should ask questions about this. Okay? It says the fire of God has fallen from heaven and burned up your sheep and all the shepherds. I am the only one who escaped to tell you. While he was still speaking, a third messenger arrived with this news: the 3 bands of the Chaldean raiders have stolen your camels and killed your servants. I am the only one who escaped to tell you. While he was still speaking, another messenger arrived with this news: your sons and daughters were feasting in the oldest brother's home. Suddenly a powerful wind swept in from the wilderness and hit the house on all sides. The house collapsed and all your children are dead. I am the only one who escaped to tell you. Job stood up and tore his robe in grief. Then he shaved his head and fell to the ground to worship. He said, I came naked from my mother's womb, and I will be naked when I leave. The Lord gave me what I had, and the Lord has taken it away. Praise the name of the Lord. In all of this, Job did not sin by blaming God. Listen, listen. You have not had a day this bad. We all have bad days. You ain't had a day this bad. I mean, he loses everything but his wife. How bad does this chick have to be for Satan to go, no, we're leaving her with him? We don't have much insight about her. Now, some of y'all think I'm hating on women. I ain't, but because we don't have much insight about this woman. We only have one sentence. In Job chapter 2, she says, curse God and die. Followed by, Now, the Bible don't say the part. But like if the only thing you know about somebody is curse God and die, Satan had to think, that'll be a relief if we take her. We're just leaving her around. I'm just saying. I read the Bible my own way. You can have it your way if you want to. Like this is as bad of a day as I think you could put together. If you were writing the worst novel of all time and how somebody suffered and destruction they experienced in their life, this had to be it. His wealth did not keep him from suffering. His righteousness did not keep him from suffering. But I want you to notice his response, because it is his response that challenges me. It is not the bad day that challenges me, because I have bad days, but I don't expect to ever have a bad day where all of my children die at one time, where everything I own disappears in just a matter of moments. I could, but I don't expect to have that kind of day. But it says he stood up, tore his robe in grief. Then he shaved his head and fell to the ground to worship. How different would our suffering be if our response to suffering was to worship instead of complain? How different would our struggles be if our response was to lift our hands or to sing praises to God, or to offer to him the understanding that God, I came into this world with nothing, because that's his observation. Ultimately, God's in control. If you want to know what he's saying, I came naked into this world. I'm going to leave with nothing. Blessed be the name of the Lord. You see, this piece right here is what tells us who Job really is. Now, Job's going to ask God, and he's going to question God, and he's going to say, you know what, I've lived right. Why isn't this working? Later. But in this moment, his response is to say, God gave it to me. God has taken it away from me. Blessed be the name of the Lord. I'm going to praise him because he is God, and ultimately he is in control. And I'm going to trust that whatever it is I'm going through, God has allowed to happen in my life. And God is allowing this to take place, and my obligation is to lean into him and to show forth what him in me. And it said, in all of this, Job did not sin by blaming God. What a testimony, right? I mean, in my most spiritual moments, on my best days, I would be scared to say that. Right? Or anybody else with me, or y'all just self-righteous and think you never do? No, on my best days, I would be scared to say, I didn't sin in anything. I'd be scared to say that. Maybe there are some days that I scoot through and didn't do something stupid. I don't know. I just know me. And most of the time I'm going to say something or do something or that just isn't what God would have wanted in that particular moment. It says in all of this, Job did not sin by blaming God. This is the testimony that I think all of us should work to achieve. In the most difficult moments of life, can we look to him, recognize he's in control, trust him in that moment and say, God, whatever it is you want, I'm going to honor you and I'm going to glorify you in the hardest times of my life. Because here's what I want to tell you. You will go through some difficult times. I can tell you with certainty, you're going to have some difficult days. It's going to happen. Satan is, I kind of look at it like this. The more trouble, more opposition, the more frustration you have in your life is either because of stupid choices or right choices. One of the two. Stupid choices are going to cause you a lot of grief. Right choices are also going to cause you a lot of grief because Satan is going to try to oppose where you're going, what you're doing, how you're living. He doesn't want you to live the godly life. He doesn't want you to live a holy life. He doesn't want you to live a life that follows after Christ. And so in those moments, the goal should be to be able to say, God, whatever it is in this moment, I'm going to trust you. Most of you know, before I come up here on Sundays, I write in a journal, a sermon journal. I have a journal just for my sermons. And the last thing I wrote in there, usually it's a prayer that I'm writing at the very end. I said, Lord, in the most difficult times of life, may people see you more than my struggles. Because too often it's like we want them to see our struggle. We need them to see our struggle. We want everybody to know how bad it is. And what we really should be doing is, how can I help people see God in this right now? Do my words point to him? Do my actions point to him? Am I leaning in to